In my last video on ilovekimpossibles' recent response titled Let's Talk, I highlighted the fact that this probably wasn't what she intended in a response video. I also noted that at least some details from those early drafts had leaked because they were highlighted by people like Toonshi on Twitter. Now, at time of recording, I've been unable to gain a copy of one of the original audio drafts. However, what I have been handed is nearly as good, a copy of the original draft script for the video. I took a shot in the dark and checked in with a few people who I thought may have heard one of these original drafts, and they did at least confirm that this version of the video is accurate though not complete. It seems there may have been an even longer version of this video, though God knows what was in that. Regardless, I do think it is worth talking about this original draft version, because it is very different from what was actually released, and presumably KP have been working on this version for a significantly longer period of time. That being said, rather than just releasing it onto Twitter or reading it on live, I decided that you deserve a full feeling of what this video could have actually been. With that in mind, I've decided to do a full reconstruction. So, sit down, grab a drink, and let's talk. This video discusses sensitive topics including grooming, power dynamics, and online harassment. Viewer discretion is advised. 18+ content warning. Do not harass anyone discussed in this video. Hi everyone, this is KP. I just wanted to take this opportunity to clear the air a little bit, because I took some time away from a really messy situation, and now I'm coming back to it. For those who don't know, in early May, I released a video commenting on some behaviour regarding fellow YouTubers, Saberspark and DA Games, and it wasn't really well received for a number of reasons. And first off, I just want to apologise for the tone that came with it. What I didn't realise is by talking about such serious topics and using jokes and memes, it would come off as insulting and immature. But for me personally, that's how I process trauma, is I do a lot of dark jokes to cope with my own personal trauma, like my line about Jon Stewart. So the Jon Stewart example was Jewish humour as coping because I'm Jewish, so that's not a flex. So I didn't realise that it wasn't an internalised viewpoint, and I just want to say that obviously any type of trauma is horrible and bad, and I'm so sorry you had to deal with anything, and everyone copes in their own way. So please look up some healthy coping techniques, or find a professional therapist, or do whatever you need to do to process it in whichever way you want. So, once I realised that tone was a problem, I took the video down within 3 or 4 hours of upload, and we were going to decide what to do next. And a lot of people were criticising my interactions on Twitter leading up to the video coming out. But a lot of it was personal catharsis for me because this was such a hard project, and we were working on it for such a hard time, and it was hard for me personally. It was like it was sad hearing about all of these stories, like Regardless. And that was interpreted as ego. And just for full disclosure, I was dealing with a PTSD episode in response to everything that happened with the failure of this video. So people assumed my silence was completion or guilt. And it makes me feel really weird, because it makes me feel like I'm not even allowed to have my own space to process decisions that I make at my own speed. Like, if I don't react immediately, then suddenly I'm guilty of everything everyone can think of. So, just for the record, I hate creators with ego. I know I joke a lot about myself, but I really don't think you should be making art or anything really with ego attached. Art especially. Because I feel like that's kind of a sacred thing to do. But with ego, you make it about power dynamics and who has the most subscribers or who has the most views, and it's just exhausting. And that's one of the reasons I've been doing YouTube the way I've been doing it for as long as I have, because I love art and animation, and I like talking about it in a way that I can express and have fun with. It's just part of who I am, and what I like to do, and what like my deep artistic soul. So I would probably just be doing it anyway in my head. The real question no one really asked is, okay, but what was she trying to say? If you've never heard my side before, I'm here to make sure there's even a second side to hear. And I invite you to sit with the patterns of these issues, not the personalities. So, The core of the main video originally was to criticize DA Games' Will Ryan and the rest of his team for not only how they run their Discord server, but how they handle their interactions with their fans, specifically children. There is documented proof of problematic behavior, including using slurs, accounts of parasocial behavior, and the worst one, accidentally sharing inappropriate images in the server that children have access to. And instead of addressing it and apologizing and giving a plan for how they'll never do it again, they just erase the evidence. And if a creator has access to children and behaves recklessly, that deserves scrutiny, period. Fame just isn't a shield. So let's get this straight. The core of the video was not only my interactions with DA Games, but how they handle issues of grooming and specifically issues with children. We're talking about someone with influence, access, and no real oversight. This isn't cancel culture. We're not trying to cancel anyone. This is community protection. It should have been everyone's concern, frankly. And yet, the second I brought it up, the focus became my tone, not the risk. Let's be clear, the internet will always turn everything into content, but some things aren't content, they're warnings. I didn't come forward because I wanted attention. I came forward because kids were involved. And if the biggest takeaway from that is still, she seems mad, then we need to take a hard look at what kind of fandom culture we're building. What I liked or didn't like doesn't change whether a grown man acted recklessly around minors. So let's talk about the power of the creator. If you're a creator with a young fan base, you don't get to be reckless. You don't get to play naive. This isn't a hobby, it's a position of power. And when the power's mishandled, then people can get hurt, especially kids who don't know when someone is crossing a line. The question shouldn't have been, why did KP say it like that? It should have been, what was she trying to say? This wasn't about one incident, it was a pattern, a documented, long-standing one. If the roles were reversed, if a small creator ignored this kind of behavior in someone else, they'd be complicit. So why is it controversial to speak up when I did? The risk wasn't the careers, the risk was the kids, who trusted someone they admired and maybe didn't have the tools to know when that trust was being broken. I shouldn't have been the first person to say it. I mean, I wasn't, but I'm glad I did. So during this, I recorded a story for my safety about someone making an explicit story about me. First off, I want to apologise. I thought it was clear that I was recording Chris, but I should have just said it outright. But the recording was framed as worse than the harm, like worse than making up a gross, illicit, a story about another person that might affect their career prospects, and don't tell them until the story gets back to them. It makes it seem gross. And if you're more upset about how someone defended themselves than why they had to, that's not accountability. Some people have pointed out that it was unfair that I recorded Chris without his explicit knowledge, which is fair, so I've taken down all the links of the recording. I don't have access to the raw file, but I've taken down where people have access to it. So in hindsight, I should have just asked Chris to do a public apology explaining the situation because I was personally afraid that that story would continue to harm business friendships and relationships because no one would ever have the correct version. Would Chris have done that? I don't know. I don't really know Chris, but that was a little bit of my fear, to be honest. I'm just exhausted of people talking about me without me having a way to respond. And DA Games, they loved me. They sent me 3 legal requests, including 2 they used dummy accounts to send me. Pause to read if you want to. So they see more focus in silencing the people that actually had criticism than addressing and correcting the actual criticism. So now we get to Saber. My personal connection with Saberspark was uncomfortable. And I'll just leave it at that. So going to Saber was about holding Chris accountable for his behaviour, for the story, the Nazi images, but especially his behaviour that endangered children and the unhealthy DA Games behaviour at large. And he framed me as a jealous girl mad about rejection. Shout out to Jenny Nicholson for calling out how he implied a narrative about open communication, but the evidence doesn't support that. She's the GOAT. And I don't want to be mean, but I'm not crushing. Sit down, sir. I'm open for our Skype blogs being made public to prove what happened. I'm tired of stories being shaped in private. Saber can contact me if he wants to do that. We have already tried contacting him, and I have verification from a mutual party that he's seen those emails and chosen not to respond. And just to be clear, I don't want to make content like Saber. Dismissing shows as cringe or surface level ruins audience engagement and emotional nuance. Cynical creators create shallow viewers and hurts the creators behind the work. This can harm executive decisions on struggling shows unfairly. We should fight for the future of animation, not mock it in the algorithm. Anyway, going back to Saber, he framed this as tone problems, and one of the things that came from that is that the perfect victim myth got reinforced. More resources in the description if you don't know what that is. Others used to use the video for content without context. What do you mean turns into how can I monetize this? Cartoon Sheep, person I've never met before this, didn't reach out to me, didn't quote any actual intentions, and didn't seem interested in checking his assumptions. He made a spectacle out of a story he wasn't a part of, then acted like his read was the neutral, mature one. But really, it's lazy and passive gaslighting in language of reasonableness. This seems to be a pattern with a lot of people that were commenting on this case. And if your attention's really good and not monetizing YouTube drama for your own personal gain, why don't you donate your monetized profits to charity? I'll wait for the receipts. So one of the things I did was review the video with other trauma survivors, but I didn't realize that experience wasn't universal. And then people benefited from it. Like this one incident where someone shared a DM publicly without context after offering to help me and being a fanboy. And then a spicy comment was about coping, not about dismissal. This wasn't ethics, this was optics. And then there was the situation with Courtney P. For those who don't know, Courtney P is another YouTuber, and she got into a fight in the live chat with another trauma survivor, and it wasn't great. And for the record, I disagree with how Courtney acted. I checked on the person she dismissed, discussed things directly, and cut ties. Something else I noticed is a lot of people who talk about me only talk about their side of the story, often framed for clout or trends. And this can incite harassment, unfortunately, so just please be more careful and have more honest conversations. There was how Mr. Enter treated me initially. He used the lettering tone in comments like, "This isn't My Little Pony, Rachel," to dismiss valid emotional testimony. He reduced nuanced trauma to poor tone, not just mine, but other people's, or emotional instability. He positioned himself as the reasonable adult versus immature fangirl, painting the story as punishment instead of pain. And he focused more on bullet points and timeline logic than the human impact. He assumed I was lying in places without giving me a chance to clarify. He ignored the deeper, emotional truth about what was being said, and he dismissed it as drama. Despite everything, I still appreciate that Mr. Enter gave me the chance to talk, even though I should have waited a little bit. And let me also just be clear about this. Sometimes passion in men is seen as genius, but passion in women is seen as unstable. I know I'm intense. How I present myself in my YouTube videos when I'm a horse sometimes is not the same as how I present myself in real life and how my thought process works. I personally exaggerate myself for comedy, and that gets read as an oversimplified version of my character, which affects my fandom friendships sometimes. It makes me feel a little unsafe. Something that I'm also seeing is that people's friends or favorite content creators are very special, and there's emotional connection there, and when they're found out doing something bad or perceived to be doing something bad, then some people don't question that loyalty, and like, maybe you should try and get every possible perspective you can. Maybe your friend's version of the truth might not match the other perspective of the other person. And then it gets into the bigger problem when fanboys catch feelings and don't get reciprocated. Suddenly, I'm crazy or too much. I stop being insightful and start being unstable. Gaslighting through facts. Survivors mess up dates or details and get dismissed completely. And trauma isn't a spreadsheet. Pain doesn't happen in bullet points. Like, can't we just admit that Saber might have made mistakes too? I get questions about whether I regret platforming Emily, and the answer is complicated. Emily recently did a video where she opens up about her side of things, and if you want to hear from her perspective, link is in the description. But I also want to say this. The goal was never to make Emily the center of this. It was to hold patterns accountable. And I regret by bringing Emily in, it distracted to what the whole video was supposed to be. I don't think I was wrong to listen to somebody and potentially try and help them, but I think the execution and the advice I gave could have been different in hindsight. Maybe I should have been more firm about her filing a police report first. Even during editing, someone crossed boundaries who knew what the video was about. This isn't rare, this is a pattern. And when people volunteer for me, sometimes their expectations are fun times with KP, and they're being worked, and me putting up my own boundaries seems dismissive of their expectations. I'm not interested in building a brand on trauma. I'm not letting this get reframed as a scandal when it was a warning. Some things to take away from this is have honest conversations with your friends or your work environment. It can save a lot of stress. Trust me. I know you don't have to agree with it, but I hope you sit with it, especially the child endangerment behavior. How can we use this experience to better share online communities for kids and adults? Should we have more strict age restrictions or more universal moderation guidelines for creators? And just a reminder that harassment is never okay. Criticism of the video and situation is fine, but people use this opportunity to tell me to unalive myself. And me taking space from the situation was seen as a dismissal of the concerns. I feel like I'm not allowed to have boundaries sometimes, and consider why you have to tell a person you never met that they shouldn't be alive anymore. That's not okay. Just some bonus things to take away from this. I also didn't realize how weird Brody Fandome was. Like, the level, but it seems to me that he's very mentally ill, and I hope he gets the help he needs. Sorry. Fuck me. And maybe takes a break from the internet. So regardless of Claire, the Black Griffin tweets are still kind of weird. But what about Destiny? What about the kids that Gabe was DMing, for those who don't remember? Destiny was Black Griffin's original accuser. What about the deviant art note where he's trying to hang out with a 14-year-old? Saber used my video's performance as an excuse to ignore the issues and shout out to all my friends and supporters and fans that were skeptical of information when it was first coming out. You guys are the real MVPs, and I really appreciate it. I know this was a weird situation, but your loyalty and patience means a lot, and I really appreciate you. Like, never stop shining. And just some happy things to end on. So what's next? I've been working on a show pitch, and I'm really hoping something like my story can change the world. This is my dog Toby. He's very cute, and he likes to wear outfits. Please enjoy.